The message arrived without warning, bypassing every security protocol known to man. It slipped past Earth's orbital defenses, ignored firewalls, and embedded itself into every major communications network simultaneously. Governments scrambled to contain it, but it was too late. The moment the Dominion's words were decoded, the world changed. Asterisk to the species known as humans. Inhabitants of Sol. 3 asterisk. We extend an opportunity. Asterisk the Dominion requires warriors. The pay is substantial. The risk is absolute. Asterisk. Those who sign up will not return unchanged, if they return at all. Only the boldest need apply. Within hours, the message spread like wildfire. News anchors dissected its meaning. Military strategists debated its implications. But before officials could formulate a response, thousands of civilians had already replied. They didn't ask for details. They didn't negotiate. They simply sent 2 words: I volunteer. Colonel James Cade read the message again, his jaw tightening. He had spent his life preparing for a war Earth never fought. A soldier in an era of uneasy peace, he had seen too many conflicts fizzle into bureaucracy, too many enemies crushed by orbital superiority before boots touched the ground. This was different. The Dominion didn't beg, didn't recruit. They extended an invitation, and humanity answered. Admiral Leonov paced before him, the harsh glow of the briefing room's fluorescence casting deep shadows over his weathered face. They call it the deadliest job in the galaxy, he muttered, flipping through a tablet. We've got ex-special forces, cybernetic shock troopers, even civilian engineers signing up. And they know the risks. He turned the screen toward Cade. The statistics were brutal. 90% mortality rate. Psychological degradation. Permanent genetic alterations. This isn't war, Colonel. It's slaughter. Cade exhaled through his nose. And yet they keep signing up. Leonov slammed the tablet down. Why? Cade leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. Because we've always been like this. The Admiral studied him. Meaning, humans don't run from impossible odds. We run toward them. Cade gestured to the tablet. Every name on that list, every man and woman signing up, they aren't suicidal. They're hungry. They want a fight that means something. A challenge that can't be sanitized by diplomacy or drones. Leonov drummed his fingers on the table. And what about you? Why are you going? Cade didn't hesitate. Because someone has to make sure they come back. The Admiral exhaled through his nose, staring at him for a long moment before nodding. Fine. You're leading the first deployment. Gather your squad. Your transport leaves in 2 hours. The Dominion's arrival was as unceremonious as their message. No grand spectacle. No display of power. Just a single vessel descending into Earth's atmosphere. Its sleek, organic form unsettling against the night sky. Cade stood at the edge of the launch site, watching as the ship settled onto the tarmac. Around him, his team was silent. 50 soldiers, all volunteers. Some were veterans like him, their bodies enhanced with cybernetics or muscle weaves. Others were raw recruits, eyes bright with reckless determination. The ship's ramp extended with a quiet hiss. From within, a towering figure emerged. A Sorthian, 8 feet tall, for arms folded across its armored chest, skin dark and ridged like volcanic stone. Its yellow eyes flicked over the gathered humans, unreadable. When it spoke, its voice was a low, guttural growl, perfectly translated by the device at its throat. You were told the risks, it said, and yet you came. Cade stepped forward. We did. The Sorthian studied him for a moment before inclining its head. Then follow. No more words. No ceremonies. Just action. Cade led his soldiers up the ramp, stepping into the unknown. The air inside the ship was thick with an unfamiliar scent, a mix of metal and something organic. The interior pulsed faintly, as if the walls themselves were alive. No seats, no safety harnesses, just an open space lined with bioluminescent veins that dimmed as the ramp sealed shut behind them. A sudden shift. Weightlessness. Then the pull of acceleration, so intense it crushed the breath from Cade's lungs. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself upright. Around him, his team adjusted, some grunting in discomfort, others silently enduring. The Sorthian commander stood unbothered, watching. "You adapt quickly," it observed. Kate smirked. "You have no idea." The journey passed in silence, the hum of the ship the only sound. Hours stretched into an eternity, and then deceleration. A jolt. The walls shuddered, then split open to reveal a sky like liquid fire. The Dominion's warfront. Cade stepped forward, the weight of a new battlefield settling on his shoulders. He had no orders, no mission brief. Only one certainty. Survival would not be enough. Humanity had come to win. The ship's hull split open, revealing a sky like molten metal, streaked with the ghostly afterimages of orbital bombardments. The air was thick with the acrid stench of burnt ozone and something more primal, blood, decay, the remnants of battles long lost. Colonel James Cade stepped onto alien soil, boots sinking into a terrain that felt neither solid nor liquid, as though the very ground resented their presence. The Dominion had not prepared them with speeches or promises of glory. There was no orientation, no explanations, just deployment. The rest of his team emerged behind him, their movements crisp but wary. 50 soldiers, all human, all volunteers. They had trained for uncertainty, but nothing in their past could compare to the raw, chaotic hellscape before them. Jagged spires of blackened rock jutted from the surface like shattered teeth, the remains of a city consumed by relentless warfare. In the distance, structures loomed, Dominion fortifications, their architecture twisted and organic, pulsing with faint bioluminescence. Between them and the safety of those walls lay the battlefield. And the enemy, the Sorthian commander, the same towering figure who had escorted them aboard, strode forward. The Dominion had yet to offer a name. Perhaps to them, names were irrelevant. It regarded the humans with an expressionless stare, then gestured to the ruins ahead. "This world is lost," it said, voice carrying an unnatural weight. "The enemy burrows beneath us. They will come when night falls. You will either prove your worth or die." Cade met its gaze. "And if we survive," the Sorthian's mandibles clicked. "Then you fight again." That was all. No further instructions. The commander turned and vanished into the ranks of its own kind, leaving the humans alone in a world that wanted them dead. Cade turned to his squad. "We dig in." They moved without hesitation, fanning out across the ruins, using what remained of the alien city as cover. He had a team of hardened soldiers, ex-Marines, special ops, cybernetic shock troopers, but no amount of training could mask the electric undercurrent of uncertainty in their movements. Some whispered to themselves, muttering prayers or old habits, while others remained deadly silent, eyes scanning the horizon. They had all read the reports. The enemy was called the Vor'Shai, a species never encountered by humanity before this war, never mentioned in Dominion records beyond the grim warning. Asterisk, they do not surrender. They do not negotiate. They do not stop. Asterisk. The first scream cut through the air like a blade. It came from the farthest perimeter, a scout who had moved too close to the ruins. The sound of gunfire erupted, short panic bursts, followed by a sickening crunch. Then silence. Cade signaled his team forward, weapons raised, bodies low. The soldier's body was already gone, dragged beneath the broken ground, a slick trail of blood marking the path. A single rifle lay abandoned, its barrel still warm. No sign of the enemy. No movement. Just a quiet, waiting horror. "Eyes on the ground," Cade ordered. "They're underneath us." The realization came too late. The earth exploded. The Vor'Shai erupted from below, their bodies a nightmare fusion of chitin and muscle, claws like obsidian blades. They moved too fast, too fluid, closing the distance before the first shot could land. The initial clash was chaos, screams lost beneath the roar of gunfire and the screech of alien war cries. Cade fired point-blank into the face of a Vor'Shai, the armor-piercing rounds shredding through its skull. Another lunge from the side. He spun, slamming a combat knife between the plates of its exoskeleton, twisting until it stopped moving. Around him, His soldiers fought with the desperation of a species that refused extinction. Jackson, a cybernetically enhanced Marine, tore one of the creatures apart with a gauntlet fist, hydraulic servos whining. Vasquez, a demolitions expert, set charges mid-battle, using the terrain against their enemy. But for every Vor'Shai they killed, more emerged, swarming like ants, bodies coiling and striking in perfect, horrifying unison. And then, just as suddenly as it began, they were gone. The Vor'Shai retreated beneath the ground, vanishing as if they had never been there at all. Silence fell over the battlefield, broken only by the ragged breathing of the surviving soldiers. Blood pooled in the crevices of the ruins, seeping into the alien soil. Cade wiped his blade clean, scanning what remained of his squad. 20 men and women stood where 50 had landed. The rest were gone, dragged beneath, torn apart, erased in minutes. The Sorthian commander returned, stepping over the bodies without a glance. It studied the remaining humans, its yellow eyes glinting in the dim light. "You live." Cade's knuckles tightened around his rifle. "Yeah." The Sorthian's gaze swept over the battlefield. "You did not run. You did not hesitate." A pause. "Acceptable." Cade exhaled slowly. "What's next?" The commander tilted its head slightly, as if considering. Then it pointed to the horizon, where the Dominion's fortress pulsed like a living heart. "Now," it said, "you fight a real war." The war did not stop. It did not slow, did not relent, did not offer them the courtesy of recovery. The Dominion had no need for soldiers who could not endure. Those who had fallen were already forgotten, their names erased from the roster as if they had never existed. The remaining humans fought on. Cade moved through the trenches of the Dominion stronghold, boots heavy with the weight of dried alien blood. The fortress was a monolith of organic metal, pulsing faintly, as though alive. It had held against the Vor'Shai for nearly a year, but now the enemy was shifting, adapting. The hives had learned. Their attacks were no longer wild and furious. They were coordinated, strategic. Even the Dominion was struggling to hold the line. He paused at the edge of an overlook, staring down at the battlefield beyond the walls. The sky flickered with weapons fire, streaks of energy lancing through the air, illuminating the shifting tide of creatures below. They moved like a wave, an ocean of chitin and fangs, coiling around the ruins like something alive. The Dominion's artillery pounded the ground, incinerating entire sections of the horde, but still they came, endless and unyielding. The war could not be won with firepower alone. The Vor'Shai were dug in, their tunnels spreading like veins beneath the planet's crust. As long as those tunnels remained, the Dominion was fighting ghosts, striking at shadows while the true threat grew stronger beneath their feet. Cade turned away from the sight, stepping back into the war room. A holographic projection flickered in the center of the chamber, displaying the network of tunnels that ran beneath them. The Dominion had mapped only a fraction of the hives, their scanners unable to penetrate deep enough. What they knew was simple. The tunnels stretched for miles, an intricate labyrinth of death. Vasquez, the demolitions expert, ran a hand through her sweat-slicked hair, staring at the map with tired eyes. "You see it, right?" she muttered. Cade nodded. "Yeah, there's only one way to end this." Jackson, his cybernetically augmented form leaning against the table, let out a humorless chuckle. "We're really doing this, huh?" "We have to." Cade exhaled. "We take out the tunnels, we cut off their supply lines. They lose the war before they realize what happened." Vasquez gestured to the map. "That's assuming we make it deep enough to plant the charges. We go down there, we're cut off. No backup, no extraction." Cade met her gaze. "We knew the risks when we signed up." Jackson smirked. "Damn right we did." The Sorthian commander entered then, moving with the measured grace of its kind. It studied the humans, its yellow eyes gleaming in the dim light. "You have a strategy." Cade nodded. "We take the fight underground. Infiltrate the hives. Collapse them from the inside." The Sorthian's mandibles twitched in what might have been amusement. "Madness." "Maybe," Cade said, "but it'll work." The commander studied him for a long moment. Then, with slow, deliberate movement, it stepped aside. Then go. Die well. Cade didn't waste time. His team moved quickly, gathering their gear, checking their weapons. The Dominion would not assist them. This was their mission now, their war to win. The entrance to the tunnels was a yawning maw of blackness, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and something acrid beneath it. Cade adjusted his rifle, took one last breath of open air, then stepped forward, vanishing into the dark. The tunnels swallowed them whole. There was no sound at first, only the distant drip of moisture against stone. The walls pulsed faintly, veins of bioluminescent fungus casting eerie shadows. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the air became, the weight of the hive pressing down on them like something alive. Vasquez checked her scanner. Movement ahead. Cade signaled for silence. They pressed against the walls, weapons raised, breath shallow. The shadows shifted. Then they came. The Vor'Shai did not charge in mindless frenzy. They moved with purpose, darting through the darkness like living blades. Cade fired first, the muzzle flash illuminating a nightmare of twisting limbs and gleaming fangs. The battle was fast, brutal. Jackson crushed a creature's skull with his augmented strength. Vasquez planted charges as she fought, every motion calculated, precise. They pushed deeper, bodies moving on instinct, adrenaline carrying them forward. The hive shuddered around them, the creatures sensing the threat, converging. Time was running out. Vasquez slammed the last charge into place. We're set. Cade didn't hesitate. Detonate. The explosion rocked the tunnels, fire and debris consuming everything. The walls cracked, the ground trembled. The hive screamed. The world collapsed. And then there was nothing. The world trembled beneath their feet as they ran. Behind them, the tunnels collapsed in a cascade of fire and dust, burying the heart of the Vor'Shai hive beneath tons of rock. The detonations had worked, but survival was still uncertain. Cade forced himself forward, lungs burning, boots pounding against unstable ground. Jackson was beside him, his cybernetic arm sparking from battle damage, his face twisted in pain but determined. Vasquez stumbled but caught herself, her demolition gear clattering against her armor. They had done the impossible, but now they had to escape the ruin they had created. The ground groaned, a deep, guttural sound that sent vibrations up their legs. Something beneath the surface still lived. Cade barely had time to register the sensation before the first Vor'Shai burst through the fractured earth, its massive frame silhouetted against the raging fires behind them. It was unlike the others, larger, faster, more aware. A leader, perhaps, or the last desperate defense of a dying species. It did not screech in fury like the others. Instead, it moved with eerie precision, its four arms splaying wide as it lunged. Cade rolled aside as its claws sliced through the air where he had been standing. He came up firing, unloading an entire magazine into its armored torso. The creature staggered, but did not fall. Jackson met it head-on, slamming his augmented fist into its skull with a force that cracked the chitin. It reeled, but its retaliation was brutal. One strike sent Jackson sprawling, blood spraying from a fresh wound along his side. Vasquez didn't hesitate. She pulled the last explosive charge from her vest, activated the fuse, and hurled it at the beast. The blast sent shock waves through the battlefield, knocking them all back. When Cade scrambled to his feet, the creature was still moving, though barely. Its limbs twitched, its exoskeleton cracked, and leaking a dark, viscous fluid. It let out a sound, something low, almost mournful, before finally collapsing. They had no time to dwell on it. The Dominion fortress loomed ahead, their only chance at survival. Cade hauled Jackson to his feet, and together they ran, every muscle screaming in protest. Behind them, the ground caved inward, the tunnels fully collapsing, sealing the hive's fate. The Vor'Shai would not rise from this. By the time they reached the fortress gates, their strength was nearly gone. Dominion sentries stood waiting, their tall, insectoid forms unreadable. For a moment, Cade thought they might be refused entry, left outside to die with the battlefield they had just annihilated. But then the massive gates groaned open, and the Sorthian commander stepped forward, its piercing yellow eyes surveying them with something close to admiration. "You survived," it said simply. Cade let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Yeah," he rasped. "We did." The commander studied them for a moment longer before stepping aside. Enter. Inside, the fortress pulsed with the quiet hum of Dominion technology, an alien symphony of glowing walls and organic circuitry. Medics moved in, strange appendages extending to assess their wounds. Cade let himself sink against the cold surface of the wall, exhaustion threatening to pull him under. Vasquez sat beside him, head tilted back, eyes half-lidded. Jackson chuckled weakly. Not bad for a bunch of expendable humans. The Sorthian commander turned its head slightly, as if considering. "You are no longer expendable," it said. "You are warriors of the Dominion now." Cade stiffened. That wasn't the deal. The commander's mandibles clicked in something akin to amusement. The deal was survival. You have survived. Now you fight again. A heavy silence settled over them. The truth was undeniable. Humanity had proven itself in the deadliest war zone in the galaxy. They had won this battle, but in doing so, they had bound themselves to the Dominion's endless war. The galaxy did not grant peace to those who thrived in war. It only offered more battles. Vasquez exhaled sharply. "So that's it? We just keep fighting?" The commander regarded her with those unreadable alien eyes. "That is your choice. But tell me, humans, would you return to a life of waiting? Of watching from the sidelines while others fight your battles? You have seen what lurks beyond your homeworld. Can you ignore it now?" Cade closed his eyes for a moment, letting the weight of it all sink in. Earth had sent them to prove something. And they had. But now they knew the truth. The war was never going to end. The Dominion would always need soldiers. The Vor'Shai were just one enemy among many. And yet, against all odds, they had survived. Not because of Dominion training or alien weapons, but because of who they were. Because humanity, for all its recklessness and defiance, refused to break. Cade opened his eyes and met the commander's gaze. "We fight on our terms. No orders without reason. No missions without choice." The Sorthian studied him for a long moment, then gave the smallest nod. Then welcome to the war. And just like that, humanity took its next step into the void. Not as pawns, not as victims, but as something else entirely. Something the galaxy had not yet learned to fear. Survivors.